Hello, Manu. Welcome you to the mock interview session by the Big Data Show. Um, so before we getting started, so I'd like to introduce about myself. So myself, Manoj. I have around close to 6 years of experience in data engineering. So I have worked on with multiple ETL projects. So with that, so I have like good expertise on working with multiple data architecture like data lake, data warehouse, and data lake architectures. And I have also like worked on with multiple tech stacks as like a PySpark, Python, SQL. So these are the predominant programming language and frameworks which I use on my daily basis. And I'm also like good with working with AWS cloud services and with orchestration. So we use Airflow and I'm also good at working with CI/CD pipelines. So for that, we use tools like Jenkins and Terraforms for the resource management and all those things. So before we get started, so I would like you to brief about yourself and your experience and what you exactly do with your current project.
Oh, sure. Sounds good. Thanks for the welcoming message, Manoj. It was nice being here. And this is Manu, and I'm currently working as a staff data engineer for a company called Ahead. And
Hmm.
so my role here is to kind of like leading a team of 3 engineers, where we are
Hmm.
responsible for building a streaming application for a finance client using the AWS tech stack. So I'm currently leveraging the Amazon Kinesis and Lambdas for predominantly for this project. And my
Hmm.
role here is kind of like an overlap between like the business teams and the dev teams. So I deal with a lot of like business operation side of things as well to understand like the existing architectures, because my financial client is kind of like trying to move from their on-prem systems to an Oracle financial cloud. So we are helping out with the data flow integrations in that area. And so currently we have like 15 different data flow integrations, which are kind of like uh, being done very manual basis on the current architectures. So what we are trying to do here is to automate those flows using the AWS streaming side of things. So building a pipeline on a more streamlined fashion so that the data flows seamlessly through the systems without any manual intervention. So prior to Ahead, I did work at Microsoft for 3.5 years as a senior data and analytics engineer, where I was responsible for building out analytics for products related to patients' consultation journey, especially on the radiology side of things. So here, there are products. So I can explain with a small example. So suppose you go to a doctor's office and you were supposed to get a CT scan ordered, and you go to a radiologist office to get the scan done. So instead of carrying the reports backward and forward, so there are products in place which carry the conversation over the network. And I was responsible for building out analytics on especially the usage analytics to review how these products are being used across like different clients and across like different radiologist organizations and hospitals. So my stakeholders here are my customer success teams and my product owners. So again, my role is kind of an overlap between like interacting with the stakeholders a lot on understanding the requirements and building out the ETL pipelines. So it's a typical batch pipeline which I have built at Microsoft to which extracts the data from the application data sources and then like some transformations on Spark and then like loads into a data warehouse. So the end visual product is a Power BI report, which is used like by my stakeholders. And prior to that, I did work as a software engineer for 2 years at Microsoft. And I hold a master's in data science degree as well. So I have around like 5 years of experience within the data science field.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, so before we getting started, so can you just brief us about your transitions between the software engineering and the data engineering, basically? So how
Sure.
exactly this? Yeah.
Okay. So I started my career as a software engineer right after my master's degree in data science. So I was working for a clinical analytics application within the Microsoft domain in the healthcare side of things. So I did work as a backend engineer for the 2 years on the backend engineer for it's a Django web app. I did work there. And later I figured out my interests are more aligned towards the data analytics and engineering initiatives rather than the traditional software engineering side. So I had an initiative on this, and I reached out to like one of the manager who's actually working on this analytics initiatives within the company. And then I transitioned within the company and align myself more into this and involve myself into more in the analytics initiatives within the company itself.
That's great. When we speak about data engineering, there are like certain components which are very more specific for the distributed computing. So you had some self-learning over that, or like how exactly that happened?
Yes, so it was a complete new topic for me. I was during my academics, I did work on a lot of like data science, machine learning projects, and more
Mhm,
on the data analytics as well. And in terms of like the exploratory data analysis or any about visualizations, I have learned during my masters. And whereas like I didn't had like much exposure to the data engineering side of things from my background, especially in my masters, I was more on to the analytics side of things. So this
mhm,
was a completely a new learning step for me. And since I
mhm.
was at Microsoft, we had to like to use like the Azure suite of tools. And to upskill myself, I have taken up like the Azure fundamentals training and also like AZ data engineering training as well. To make sure I know about the ecosystem and what are the components available on these things. So
All right.
this is the homework which I have done to keep up my pace with the team itself.
That's great. So before we get started with the interview, so I have like one general questions around this data engineering. So as a data engineer, we know how important this data is, or like because like most of the organizations are trying to make like a lot of decisions based on their data. So
Yes,
like all the decisions are like completely data driven, right? So
yes,
on a day-to-day basis, like we see a lot of applications which efficiently use this data to make our life better. So for example, I would say the recommendation tool in YouTube. So basically if you see about this the homepage of YouTube, it doesn't looks the same for my account and for your account, because it's completely based on the recommendations. So on the streaming, like they get the data, and like based on this they build the recommendation videos for you. Basically it's like more personalized for you, right? So
yes.
just like that, can you just provide some like application which fascinates you, like on like how the data is being efficiently used, and can you just give us some example?
Sure, definitely. So, in my case, what I have experienced and evidenced is like I'm trying to build out a story from the raw data. So,
Mhm.
when the data is in just like raw form and without any analytics or anything, I'm trying to like to bring all the data together and building out of like a story at the end of the my pipeline. And this is something I would analogize in terms of like data engineering. Data we generate is kind of like an asset to the organization in order to make the good decisions out of data. So this is kind of like a new oil for the field, I believe.
That's great.
Yeah,
All right, so we'll get started with the coding challenge. So
sure.
basically I have like two questions for you. So one is a Python question and another is a SQL question.
Sure.
So before we get started, so can you just share your screen and open a notepad probably?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you can use any of the editor of your choice probably.
Is this visible?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay.
So I'm sending you a question. So basically, can you check the chat?
Yeah. Let me paste it here.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So all right. So basically, consider this to be a dictionary. So within this dictionary, you have like multiple key values. So let's say like V1, V2,
Okay.
and V5. So
Okay.
basically, it's not just a basic dictionary. It is also a kind of like a next. It has a nested structure basically. If you see like within V2 as a key, so we again have a dictionary which has some values to it as like integer, list, and again a dictionary, right?
Yes.
So what I
Yes.
really want is, so as an output, so I want you to sum all the values. Like let's say for V1, I have like value 10, and for V2, within V2, I have this V3 as 20, and V6 as like 30, and V7. Within V7, we have V8 as 40, and within V5, we have like 25 and 25, right? So I want a summation of all this value.
Okay, so my question here is like you are expecting like one total number, like the sum of all the keys
Yes, exactly.
in the dictionary. So it's going to be
Yeah,
like
sum
10.
of all values in the dictionary.
Okay, it's going to be like 10 plus 20 plus 30 plus 40 and 25 plus 25.
Yes, maybe it will sums up to close to 150. So
Okay,
that's
okay,
what the output I'm expecting.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
So given this is kind of like a nested loop inside the keys, so
Yeah.
especially for V2, it's not direct. So we need to parse it to another level for the V2. Okay, let me think. So
Yes. Yeah.
for V2. So I think the first step is to flatten out this thing and bring everything to one page. So then
Yeah.
and apply the sum operation on top of that, like for all the keys.
Yeah. So you can also use the basic Python language to do that. Not really
Okay.
you have to like use
Uh,
Spark to like flatten it or something else. Like it's a very simple variable, right?
okay. One question here. Should my code be
Mhm.
like generic, or can it be like specific to this problem? My parsing object.
Try to build it somewhat generic, like maybe like even if I like modify my dictionary with the same nested pattern, it should accommodate that.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
pattern will be the same for V2 then.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially for my dict. So, in order to okay, okay. So, in order to iterate in the dictionary, I would use something called the key comma values in the dictionary.
Right.
So, for k comma v in my dict dot items. Okay, for k comma v. So I need to sum all the values for all the
Right.
keys. So I will first take a sum variable as well and initialize it to 0. Okay. So if my v is integer, my
Sorry to interrupt you, Manu. Can you just increase the word of the font for this complete thing? Like,
yeah, sure.
font size, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to put it as a title. I think here we don't have the size set up. Okay. Okay. So if my type of the value,
So let's
right?
think about the logic. So before
Mhm.
we get into the implementation, so what is your approach of like handling this problem?
Okay. So for I will iterate my thought process is to I will iterate every key
Mm-hmm.
and get the value of it. So if the value is just integer, I would
Mm-hmm.
just like append it to the sum. And if it is if the type of the value is a dict, then I would
Mm-hmm.
write another logic to go inside and parse that one. And
Mm-hmm.
if the uh, value is like a list, if the type
Mm-hmm.
of the value is a list, then I would loop over all the elements in the list and then add it to the sum. Does
That's
that
great.
sound?
So your approach is correct. Yeah. So also a question. So when you
Mhm.
said like if you're so consider like if you're a if your value is basically a dictionary. So let's say for example the V2. So it's
Yeah.
going to be again a dictionary. So within dictionary, you probably have a key and its value. Maybe like it can be a integer or list or
Oh
like
yeah.
a dictionary again. So
Mm-hmm.
don't you think like you'll be again doing the same logic as like what you exactly do it before in the
Yeah.
first iterations?
Yeah, yeah, I see a list inside that one, another dictionary as well, right? So maybe
Yeah.
we can do something like a reusable build out like reusable code, uh,
Mm-hmm.
just to say like if there is a list inside it, we can iterate over this one and get the total of the list, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
write like sub functions in that way. We can do operations in that way. That would be like a more optimized way of solving this one.
Mm-hmm. So let me just put this way. So how about like implementing a function which does this like a case check for each of the data types, and based on this data type, like we will do the summations.
Yeah.
And how about like recursively calling this
I think
whenever it?
when iterating over the second dictionary, if you encounter a list again, right? So you can just call the list function.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Recursively in the sense, since the data types are different, right? We can't stick to a particular pattern, I suppose. Recursively calling
Mm-hmm.
the things. Um, because,
So let me just put you this way. So at the very initial iterations, so we were having this for loop of like expanding this my dictionary, right? So my dictionary variable holds a dictionary basically.
yeah,
So when you iterate through the value, so you are again like getting in touch with again a dictionary for, let's say, for v2. So you are going ahead for a dictionary again. So for
yeah.
dictionary, you're going to do the same logic again repeatedly. So it can even have a integer, can have a list, or again it can have a dictionary,
Mm.
right?
Oh, okay.
So like
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
understand
trying,
the
yeah,
same
so you
looping.
can basically try to use make use of the recursive functions.
Okay, okay. Sure. Let's try to do that then. Definition, sum of values. So we'll go and here. This is not taking this. Okay, let me write and then
Yeah, we'll do the formatting later.
yeah. If the I think I suppose the type will give the data type. If the
Yeah.
v2 is equal to int or int, you can add it to some plus equal to int. Let me write up the this one. Uh, type of v equal to equal to I can add, right, in
Mm-hmm.
list or set or tuple, anything is gonna be like
Yeah.
iterating over some.
Yeah.
So I can just write like a lambda function x for x in v,
Yeah.
and if for x in v sum plus equal to, okay. So we are handling these two. So numerics can be handled either by list, set, or tuple, or integer, or this can be integer or float, right? So I can add.
Mm-hmm. So let's try to make the use case very simple. So it's like
Oh,
only the integer which we have, and
okay.
we do not interfere with any string data type or something as such.
Okay. And if type of v equal to okay, comma it's gonna be v. Okay. So else if I need to write the final else case. I suppose all the integers goes within these structures.
Mm-hmm.
Else nothing, right? Else we can continue and return sum. And for this v, I suppose we should pass the sum also, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If I had to take this as sum equal to 0 here.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think
yeah, Manoj, I think this looks good for me. So I think there is one change which you probably have to make, like in the if condition for the
else.
integer, like
Mhm.
you have to like sum the value of v.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks good. Uh, well, so yeah, I was just expecting for a recursive function to handle this
Oh,
case.
okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think this is a good way of doing this.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So let's get on to the SQL question. So I'll just share you the question on the chat.
Okay.
So try to put it up on the notepad. Yeah. All right. So can you just copy this and paste it on your notepad?
Okay, let me read the question.
Yes.
So give me an output to show records of participants who has to show records of participants who has participated more than one event. Okay. Event name. Um
So this is the output column which I'm expecting. So the event name and is the participant name. So
okay.
basically, in the participants table, so we have the list of participants and the list of events ID which they have like participated with, and event and participant are related by this event ID, so it has a foreign reference in a event, and within the event like we have this event name. So
Okay.
I want you to get the participant who has like participated more than two events
More
along with
than
the event
one event?
name. Yeah.
More than one event.
Yes. Yeah.
Give an output to show records of participants who has participated more than one event. Okay, so every I have to show the output of all the people who have attended more than one event.
Yeah, along with the event name.
Okay. I think so. The link between these two is to get the only relation where I could use the event table is to get the event name associated with the event ID.
Yeah.
So if I could get that name with the city, and then maybe I could uh, run the counts function and check like who has attended more events, more than one event.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it
So
looks like straightforward, but when you try with the implementation, it looks somewhat tricky. Just go ahead.
okay, let's try then.
Yeah.
Show the records of participants who has participated more than one event. So they can go to like any number of events, right?
Yeah, of
Like
course. It can be one or more than one.
okay. Okay, let me try to just join these two tables so that I'll get like one big table, and then let's try
Yeah.
to get what we need.
Sure.
So I will write from participant join. So I can just do inner join because I need only the participants attended events. I don't need the events which are not attended by the participants. So I'm good with doing the common join.
Yes.
Events E. So I'm just giving an alias. From participants P join events E on P dot event underscore ID equal to E dot event underscore ID. Okay. Select. Okay. So now this join will bring me the event name as well to the same table because I'm joining the participants and the events table. The question. And
Yeah.
so I need event name. Event name I'll be getting from e dot event underscore name and the participant name as well. Okay, who has participated in more than one event? Okay. Maybe I need to first sum up the participants as well, um, who actually attended more than one event
Hmm.
from the first table, so that I could filter out them participant ID, participant name, event ID. So I need, if I do a select participant ID common having a count star greater than one, uh, grouping by, I don't need to group. Uh, yeah, group by participant ID. So
Hmm.
that would be giving me the counts. Okay, let me write one small city or just IDs at least. Just ID having count of event ID or count star can work here greater than one. Okay, participant ID from participants. Okay, so this will give me the list of participants
Hmm.
who have attended more than one event.
Right. This will
Okay.
give you.
So now again, Um, I need to check the all the events name where this participant has attended and join these two things.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me increase this one. City as select participant ID from participants. So group by participant ID having count of event critical. So this is gonna give me the, you need participant name as well, right?
Yes.
So p dot participant participant name and underscore name from p. I should where I'm just saying here I'll just get the participant's name, just a participant's ID, where participant ID in.
Yeah, Mano, I think this should work. So you could have like
Yeah,
used probably used the city itself,
yeah,
like
yeah.
after having the city expression, you could have like just did a select star
One.
from city, select the participant ID from city.
Yeah, yeah. Select.
Hello.
Yeah, I just need participant, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
City. Okay, I think this should work according to the expected one.
Yes, this should work. Yeah. So that's why I stated that maybe this looks pretty straightforward, but it's kind of a tricky question actually.
Yeah, yeah. That's tricky.
All right. So with regards to Python and SQL, so you're definitely good at it. And all right. So let me get through your resume, and we'll just have some questions around like your projects and all. All right. So you have worked on this data warehousing concept, right?
Yes.
Uh, like you had your target system as data warehouse. So
Yes.
I have a question. So why do we really need a data warehouse? So let's say we already have this data available on some source systems, and where all this data are coming on a real time. So why can't we just use the source systems to do the analytics? Why do we really need a data warehouse basically?
Sure, I can explain these things. These are like two trade-offs. So when you consider a source system, ideally it will be like a transactional source system with every record being inserted based on the application. So these are like a more normalized way of organizing the data, where you have like data inserted into multiple tables and have their relationship integrity to maintain the asset constraint things. So this is like if your source data is more on the transactional level and it's a more normalized level, like following the normal forms and everything. So whereas coming, why do we need the, to answer the question, why do we need a data warehousing thing, is like data warehousing is kind of like a more denormalized way of arranging the data. We call it as like a dimensional modeling, in terms of like if you consider like a fact or a dimension table, and in terms of like a star schema, if you consider the star schema. So the transition, why do we need this transition, is like in order to run for uh, the data warehousing side of things is mainly like read heavy systems, because you just run the queries on top of it and you don't do like major every day, every hour inserts or every minute inserts on these systems. These are pretty much like read heavy systems. And for the read heavy system, instead of like keeping your data into like multiple joins, into multiple tables, the trade off here is to build a more denormalized way of arranging the data, so that your query runs faster, rather than like join, if you have like multiple joins and indexes over these tables, it might take some time for your query to fetch all the data from different normalized way. So the more the trade-off here is to make sure your query runs faster, rather than the arrangement of the data within the tables. So in order to make sure your query runs in a very optimized way, because say suppose you are like linking your queries to your dashboard should run quicker, like it has to be have like minimum latency, because customers can't accept like 10 seconds or 20 seconds just loading the data, so just that your SQL query is running in the backend. So the trade-off is to make sure your query runs faster, and it is okay to trade off for the normalization, especially for your query optimization.
All right. Okay. So so basically you mentioned about using some star schema, right?
Yes,
So in your project, so which schema basically you have used when you are doing the data modeling?
I've especially used star schema in terms of like a center fact table, which is like an event activity table, and all the entities describing that events are the dimension tables.
All right. Okay. So so you said like you in your current project, so you collaborate with your stakeholders, right? So how you basically get your requirements, and how do you like model your data warehouse, or how do you exactly do that?
Sure, I can explain that. So we operate in kind of like a quarterly manner. So at the beginning of the quarter, we do something called like quarterly planning to make sure what we want to deliver by the end of the quarter and what are our requirements. So in the beginning of the quarter, I do get like a very vague style of requirements from my product owners and my stakeholders, who are like the completely non-technical people, who are like who have like just a sales background but not on the technical side or anything related to these tools and technologies. So they are like the primary persons to interact with the customers. So they deal with the customer calls and everything. So my reports in terms of like my projects, my reports were especially used by my customer success teams, which help in their quarterly calls with their customers, quarterly planning calls to see like how the sales or how the product is being used. And I do get like just like one or two lines of requirements on what they wanted to visualize things in their report, which is not even clear a dashboard on what charts to put and everything. Nothing was decided on the first day of the quarter. So what happens is like once we figured out like what concept we want to visualize on, so I would gather up with my product teams and work with the upstream teams on to assess like what columns I need actually from the upstream application source databases, right? So even the application source databases have like a lot of tables and a lot of columns, which I might not need everything for my downstream analytics. So I'll do
Hmm.
some assessment on the columns or tables which I have required for my just like one line of concepts to see like what I will collaborate with my product owners. They are the ones who will help me like to understand like what concepts and what tables and what columns might be useful for the downstream side of things. So the first step is to assess those requirements and bring out those columns and tables, writing extract queries, interacting with the source databases. And so once the source data I have in my raw format, I will do it. That gets loaded into, say, suppose a raw layer like a raw ADLS layer or any S3, any storage. And then comes like a transformation layer. So even though I extracted the raw layer especially for my requirements, I might need to like to transfer this data according to my requirements, if there are any like missing values or null values, or if I need any like date type conversions according to my schema downstream. So I would then
Hmm.
handle all those transformations using my Spark, since we are dealing with the big data systems. So I've utilized like PySpark in my project. So the PySpark handles all the data manipulations, all the data wrangling side of things. And then comes like this dimensional modeling design. So where we actually convert like the existing like OLTP systems to a more OLAP design in terms of like the fact and dimensional tables. And so once that schema is finalized on the end reports, my dashboard gets connected to this database, which actually runs the
Hmm.
SQL queries on the and visualizes the report. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, that's it. Does answer. So when you say about dashboards, so like what kind of dashboards so you have primarily worked on? So in your resume, I can see like you have used Streamlight, so which is basically a Python library for creating this dashboard. Or like what kind of dashboards you basically worked on, like, and how do you basically connect with your source?
So I have primarily worked for my ETL project. I worked on Power BI dashboard. Since we have some link services attached with the within the Azure Synapse Analytics ETL tool, so they have some integrations plugins to connect with the Power BI as well. So I have utilized that using like link services and integration runtimes to connect to the Power BI dashboard, and that connects to my data warehouse. So
Hmm.
where it could actually fetch the schema from there and load the data.
All right. So, like when you speak about like Power BI having this data, so does it actually stores this data in a Power BI server, or like every time we are reading this data from our data warehouse? So how it actually works?
Sure. There are actually two modes in Power BI. It's called like the direct. I'm not sure about the another one. There are actually two modes where the Power BI directly imports your data set or it fetches from the source systems as well. So there are options to refresh the data set so that whenever some data gets added, your visualizations get updated on the end side. I think it's import versus direct query. There are two options in Power BI. So you can choose accordingly, like on what frequently you want to update your dashboards and how freshness, depending upon the freshness of the data. you figure out.
All right. So when you speak about like doing this data manipulation, data filter, and all those things, like you probably might have interfered with some data quality issues, right? So because like no like source system is consistent with the data which they have. Like how do you handle the data quality issues basically?
Definitely, I can explain this with a scenario which I have encountered within one of my projects, especially with the upstream sources. Um, one of the issue which we have faced is like there was an upstream schema change, which was breaking our pipeline, and we weren't intimated in time on the changes that had happened on the application database for the upstream product which we are working on. And this ultimately broke our pipeline because they have changed some of like the data length characteristics, so which was not fitting in our pipelines that we have like estimated size. So it was like kind of like an out of bound error for the data issue. In order to accommodate these things, like once we have like figured out like why this was failing and did some root cause analysis on to trace back on what actually is the problem, and then we identified the source has been changed. The source schema's length of the structure has been different from like what we have defined for our data warehouse side of things. So in order to mitigate these ones, like one thing we have approached is like to make sure we have like collaboration between the upstream teams and the stakeholders on the pipeline side of things. And one more thing which we have done is like adding a lot of like quality checks so that the data stays the data integrity is maintained. In that case, we have added something like a schema checks to make sure the data is adhering to the schema, and also like the column types and everything we were checking prior. And if there is any error in that case, so it would raise a notification to the appropriate product owner of the pipeline to make sure the issue is failing here, the test case is failing. So there's going to be like error code for each type of intimated to the product owner in terms of like an email, so that they could jump in and work on those things. So it's kind of like adding a lot of like alerting, logging, and quality checks across the pipeline so that we could detect the early errors.
All right. So alerting is fine. So basically, where do you exactly have your data quality check on picture? Like, do you do it before the transformations or after the transformations?
So some of the so the schema checks happen like pre-validation side of things itself.
Mm-hmm.
Since it's raw data and we have to adhere to the file's schemas, so we do some pre-validation checks and some on the post-validation side as well.
So how are this invalid messages or like then being processed? Like you are just giving a notification. So how does it block the invalid message like before going into the transformations?
So we are so if any file is processed till then, so that goes into like a failed folder within the ADLS. From like a processing folder, it gets transferred to the failed folder, and then
Mhm.
like we have to like to make sure we run it again so that it picks up again once the fixes are done.
All right. All right.
And a
So
lot of like
did
trying
mhm.
mechanisms also I have added within the pipeline itself. So in one of my projects, we are actually doing a post request to the Oracle side of things. So our data just go in the form of a post request to the end destination. So sometimes the network may be down and we might face some API issues, especially with the connecting to the Oracle server. So in that case, we have implemented something called like the retry up to a threshold number of times. It would wait for
Mhm.
a few seconds in terms of like a sleep, and then try it again. And if it exceeds the number of the threshold tries, then it would again like raise a notification. So this is one
All
of
right.
like again like the reliable mechanism.
Okay. So another question. So since you have worked on healthcare data, so
Yeah.
basically you would have like worked on with like a lot of sensitive data, and
Yes.
your data storage should be like more compliance with regards to the government regulations of each countries, right? Like, so what are all the measures you take to like make the data more compliant with the government regulations, basically?
Sure. Especially dealing with the healthcare data, we come across like two main compliant issues is like the HIPAA compliant and the GDPR. If you're
Hmm.
dealing with like European data or US data is more HIPAA complaint, it has to be HIPAA complaint. So in this case, when I worked at Microsoft, we make sure like we are not getting any like PHI involved, and like there are like security checks happening within the security. We have to review our project design, especially with the security team as well. So there are like specialized people who actually reviews and who actually traces out like all the metadata related information, with what columns actually you're bringing from your source upstream source data sets, and to make sure you actually, and they are the ones who have to like to give us permissions if we
Mm-hmm.
have to like really use like any PHI data. So we do a severe audits, the security team do a severe audits on our pipelines and all the data which we are using on the downstream, and that is one option. And another one is to like to anonymize the data. So if at all we don't want to like reveal especially like the identification data for any personal individual, so another way is to like anonymize, like mask that data while extracting itself. We apply these masking operations and bring only what data we need. So these are the two ways I have made sure like I have only actually used the data which I need for my downstream
All
systems.
right. So what kind of platform have you used for your data warehouse? Is it Redshift or Snowflake?
So actually, we have used I've used Azure SQL database for
Mm-hmm.
the data warehouse itself.
All right. So how do you basically like implement the data masking over there?
Okay, so in terms of like especially writing from the extract queries itself, so we do use like the replace columns with some anonymized values, so that
Mm-hmm.
we don't get the actual value. It's with an extract operation we add that SQL logic to
All
anonymize
right.
the data.
All right. That's great. I think we are like all already close to 1 hour. Yeah.
Okay.
It was good talking with you, and I would say like with regards to the feedback of the interview, so you really
Mm-hmm.
did well with this Python questions on the SQL, and you also have like good understanding over your project, and like we also went through about this data quality and data governance, so you have some better idea over it. So I think you're already good with what you're exactly doing, and all the best for your future career and all those things. And
Sure.
yeah, so do
Uh,
you have any questions?
First of all, I should thank you for taking your time to interview me, and it was a great session. I enjoyed like solving the questions with you, and all the questions were great. Thanks
Yeah,
for your time, first of all, and it was even I enjoyed the conversation. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think this went
Well,
well.
yeah. All
Thank
right.
you.